Are you tired of watching shows that only give you general social media theory and expect you to figure out how to apply it to your own industry? Join us for this week's episode of Social Chatter, the industry's longest running social media marketing news talk show. Not only will you learn the latest breaking news, but you'll also gain practical advice on how to apply it. Now here's your host, Christian Karasevich.
Welcome everyone to Social Chatter, your weekly social media marketing news talk show. This is episode 340 with myself and Sarah Monroe. And this week we've got a new guest, actually. We've got Darren Gibb. He's going to be joining us here shortly. He specializes in LinkedIn, specifically storytelling. So we're going to have him join us here shortly, but I'm going to go and bring on Sarah. By the way, just a quick note for those of you watching, we are over on Twitter Spaces at Social Chefs as well. We're streaming the audio basically there. So if you want to go and listen, just go check out the Twitter Spaces that is happening now. So without further ado, Sarah, it's good to see you. How you doing?
Hey, good morning. Good morning. It's a morning of tech gremlins, and we're going to do our best to keep this show moving. My computer is on about a 3-second delay, so we're just going to roll with it.
No worries at all. So, how's your week been in terms of social? I mean, yesterday was Star Wars Day, I think, right?
Yesterday, May the 4th be with all of us, right? And you gotta love it. I have to say, May 4th has become more of an internet holiday. I used to love April Fool's Day. That was one of my favorite days on the internet, way back in the day when companies like Sun Microsystems, which would go all out, or Google would put out some fun ways that you could tilt your whole browser and play around with lightsabers and all kinds of different stuff on April Fool's Day. But there's a lot of stuff to talk about. So I think we should just jump right into it. If our guest Darren can jump in, we can talk to him about solopreneurs and coaches that he works with in storytelling and using LinkedIn tools. So we've got a little bit of LinkedIn news too. So, but let's kick it off with YouTube Live, because that is big news for today. And Christian, you're going to actually demo some stuff, show people how it works.
Actually, before we do that, let's do this. Let's bring our guest on. So Darren just joined us backstage. Darren, are you good to join us right now? Or okay, great. So I'm gonna go and bring on Darren. We'll just have him just tell you a little bit about himself, and then we'll kick off with the news. So Darren, it's great seeing you. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you? So sorry I'm a few minutes late. StreamYard not wanting to play ball, so my apologies. How are we?
Good. Very good.
Good.
Excellent. Good.
So let's see. So Sarah and I were just saying that, hey, you're into storytelling, specifically storytelling on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that is there anything else you want to add that she maybe left out?
Yeah, so for me, good content is always good content, right? But storytelling is vital for it. So on platforms like LinkedIn, within the algorithm, it determines how much reach to give a post based on two key components. First of all, dwell time. So how long people spend reading a post, and the second way through the comments. So what we do by having storytelling elements, I teach the 6 essential elements. By using these within our content creation, we're encouraging the audience to be reading more, because naturally we love stories as human beings. We've got for 60,000 years of evolution based upon stories. So this is why this is so effective in LinkedIn. So I help people it's all based around the 3 C's. So first of all, we've got our community. We've got to build a community. Then we've got our content creation. And again, it's all well and nice having stories, but we need to have posts that actually convert and bring in those leads. And the final part is the conversion. So once we've got this community who loves our content, how do we then convert them? So that's why that storytelling really runs all throughout it.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to go and turn over to Sarah. We're going to kick it off with some news. We've got some questions for you later on as well. But Sarah, turn it over to you. Where do we go this week?
Yeah, so let's jump into some changes to YouTube. Specifically, YouTube Live is letting you redirect to other live video. So this is something that's been happening on Twitch for a long time. I'm not a big Twitch user. I've been in and out of it, dabbling around. But you've been able to sort of pass off a live video from one to another. And what's great about YouTube is that they are learning the lessons that have been issues with Twitch, especially when it comes to online harassment. So they've changed the settings right away when they've started this, or I shouldn't say, they built it with these settings in mind, so that if you are going to have other community members be part of this or pass on to other videos, that you can have great control over where the video leads to. And actually, I'm going to hand it to Christian, because Christian, you've been playing with this tool. You actually have a dashboard up, right? The tutorial from YouTube on how to actually make this happen.
Actually, so what I did was I grabbed a screenshot of this. So let me actually go to that screenshot real quick. So basically, this is a feature where you go into your, you have to first schedule a YouTube live video. That's going to be the first thing you're going to have to do. Mm-hmm. And so once you've got this scheduled, you're then going to go into the video and you're going to go in and edit the description of that. Basically, you're going to edit the video itself. There's an edit button on YouTube, obviously. Once you do that, you're going to then look for this, this piece. And actually, let me pull up that screenshot for everyone. So this is the, this is basically what it looks like. So it's, you're going to go into your video, and then off the left-hand side, right above the analytics for that specific video, there's a customization option. It says customization, and you're going to see at the bottom, you're going to see this new feature called redirect. And basically you're just going to click add, and it's going to let you add an additional video. You can add additional channels to redirect to it as well. So at the end of a YouTube live stream, instead of telling people, hey, go join us next week or something like that, if you have maybe another stream that you're going to participate on, or you're working with other people, you'll be able to redirect people to either a new video or another live stream or some other channels. It's a great way, by the way, Darren mentioned this earlier about building community. It's a great way to build some community with other streamers, you know, and on YouTube, I think it's going to be especially helpful, because when you add somebody, they're going to get notified as well. So once you're approved, basically, but they're going to get notified as well that they can now add you, and then that way you can start to build some collaborations with people. So
right,
that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Right. And so let's talk about some use cases here, right? Because people say, okay, well, that's great. I'm passing one live off to another live. Well, how am I going to use that? And there was a big splashy rollout of this feature this week with the Top Gun movie. They've also mentioned some things like you could actually have a little pre-party before you go into a live event. So maybe some VIPs would be part of your live stream before that. Okay. There could be, hey, we're getting everybody together to talk about something that's premiering, and then pass it off to the premiere of a music video or something like that. I'll let you guys add some comments about how to use this new feature.
What do you think, Darren?
I think so. I'm really kind of LinkedIn. I don't tend to really use YouTube and YouTube Live and things like that. But I think the idea of certainly a pre-party, so to speak, again, kind of just warming the audience up beforehand. And then again, I think it's really important. I would say, so sometimes what I do in LinkedIn is I've got access to LinkedIn audio rooms as part of the beta testing. So it's really nice to have a LinkedIn live stream and then followed up with an audio room based around the same topic. So I think within the live stream on YouTube, for example, obviously if it can be connected, even better, but at least introducing what you're going to be talking about, what you're going to be going in depth is probably a good way to do that, to build that excitement. And again, the auto redirect feature is really smart. It's really helping us there.
This kind of reminds me a bit of, if you kind of think about it from a storytelling standpoint, this sort of reminds me of maybe using stories, you know, to maybe make a YouTube video, you know, a few minute video, and have that go out and then say, hey, you know what, tune in however many hours later, in that case, you know, how many minutes afterwards. I also like this comment we received from NLTMW, who's saying, you know, for longer streams like fundraising streams, it's a great way to end one section and flow to the next stream, possibly by another host in another time zone for 24-hour streams. I like that.
Great idea. That's a great idea. And if you're doing a virtual conference, passing from one workshop to another, and that way all of the channels, right? There are controls with this so that you can pass from one channel, YouTube channel, to another, so that you could build the subscribers, maybe, you know, pass from one channel that has a lot to one that may not have as many subscribers, and use that as a tool to build the audiences for every presenter.
Definitely. And like I said, it's super easy to set up. I mean, it's you redirect your live stream for viewers. So you create a live stream, you go to the edit option for the live stream, you select customization, you go redirects, select add, and then you can either choose to premiere or search for another channel's live stream. So again, if you've got some of those partnerships going or you don't have those yet, this is a great time to start doing that. And then at the end, they're going to show a confirmation saying, your viewer is going to be redirected, kind of like at the end of a YouTube video right now. Somebody watches and they can be redirected to whatever you put up on the end screen, which could be a playlist or an individual video. So there's lots of good options there, I think, for people.
I also feel as well, Christine, it's a great way to build that community. I'm all about community building. So even if you've not got a video you want to be redirected them to specifically or a live, you can obviously through your community building be finding that partnership and redirecting your audience a little bit like on Twitch. What is it you call it on Twitch at the end? A raid. A little bit like a raid, essentially, right? You're raiding another person's stream, and again, you're directing your audience to it. There's a lot of community and commonality that can be built through that as well, I'd imagine.
And I got two other things I want to add real quick. So in order to get YouTube live redirects, it's available to creators that have more than 1,000 subscribers and no community guideline strikes. So they want, again, you want to build up that community. You want to get that community to 1,000 subscribers. So make sure you're constantly asking people, for example, to subscribe to your channel. So you're continuing to grow that. The other thing also to note about the YouTube live redirects is that it's available by default on any channel you subscribe to. So you can redirect to their channel unless the channel subscriptions are set to private. So just keep that in mind as well. And if you want to change your settings, you simply just go to YouTube Studio, click on settings, go to community, and then uncheck the option that says allow redirects from channels you're subscribed to. That's it, and just hit save.
Right. So. And those are the controls that I mentioned at the top of the story. Those are the controls to help combat some of the bots, some of the harassing raids that have happened on Twitch. YouTube is trying to make sure that doesn't happen right out of the gate with their live redirects.
Definitely. Very cool. I like this. I got to say, I really like this. And I'd also say this could also be useful if you're working, like if you're a brand, for example, and you're working with, other influencers, you could build really some momentum. For example, let's say I was working with both Sarah and Darren, and I was putting on like a big stream, for example. They could make videos that coincide with when my stream is going to go live. And they could say, hey, like you could be making just doing a normal stream, and then say, hey, don't forget to check me out. I'm going to be on later today, or hey, here's another, here's a company that I work with. They're going to be streaming in, an hour, for example, and have it redirect immediately right to that stream. So I really like the whole spider web aspect of this that I think we could end up developing here. So very, very, very nice. Okay. So Sarah, where do you want to go next?
Well, we're going to go into some familiar territory for Darren. We're going to talk about some LinkedIn news. It's interesting. We've got two pieces of news this week that I think they have buried the lead on, right? So let's talk about LinkedIn is allowing you to showcase links in your profile. So great new feature. Again, we know that LinkedIn has very long rollouts and blogs about new features that they're rolling out. There are two pieces to this announcement that I think are even more interesting than this link in your profile. And that is that they're going to allow video trimming. Right now, it's only on the mobile app, but this is a great feature for LinkedIn to put in. Yes, it's pretty standard on many other platforms, but it's great to see LinkedIn do it here too. And the biggest one that I think is the best feature is that they are going to allow you to share your newsletter more easily. And they brought a subscribe button. And for those of us who use creator mode, I haven't activated creator mode yet, but for anybody who uses creator mode and uses that newsletter function, it's now much easier to find the subscribe option and for creators to share their newsletters, which has been a little bit of a bug, I think, in the system when it's come to LinkedIn creator mode. I've had a hard time in the early weeks of it. It was really hard to figure out how to subscribe to someone's newsletter until there was the new feature that rolled out probably a month ago, I want to say. That feature was that once you launched your first newsletter, everybody in your network was notified that you had the newsletter coming out. So, and they had the option to subscribe there. But regardless, these pieces are going to be new ways to feature these new creator tools. So Darren, I'm going to toss it to you to see what you think about this announcement from LinkedIn.
Yeah, really interesting. So two things really. First of all, the newsletters and being able to add a link to your profile. I think overall it's really productive, right? It keeps that link first and foremost when somebody goes onto your profile. It's very easy to see that link. Now, the natural thing people are going to do is to link it to their Calendly, right? I would always hesitantly advise against that, because nothing says that you're not fully booked like when somebody clicks on your Calendly and there's loads of spaces, right? Let's just be honest here. So I'd be looking to perhaps link it to a link tree, especially if you've got several different social accounts. I'd be looking for it to link to a link tree rather than a Calendly or a landing page. LinkedIn increasingly is more about that authenticity and the sharing of stories and the sharing of ideas. And it's those who constantly talk about themselves, talk about how brilliant they are, or talk about why they're the best damn product on LinkedIn, don't do well. You know, you can have 50,000 followers, you can get 1,000 likes a post, but if they're not converting, then they're not converting. And it's usually because this this service is getting pushed too much. So I think having the website link is going to be really useful. I don't personally feel it's a game changer personally, but I think it's certainly going to be useful. With the newsletters, I'd also add to it, you're now also going to be able to add it to your featured section. That's huge. So it's going to be super easy to subscribe. And it's really nice. Newsletters are really nice for being front of mind. Even if people aren't necessarily reading your newsletter, you are showing up in their inbox once a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So just for being front of mind, newsletters are really nice. It also allows you to go that little bit more in depth. And I feel it's almost like the idea of having a closed Facebook group. And by that, I mean anyone can join it, but you've got to accept them. There's this little bit of insider community. So I'd be looking to give a little bit more value at more depth within those newsletters. So I think that they're both really interesting features. For me, the biggest feature in the last 4 weeks has been the changing from views to impressions on LinkedIn. This is really big. Yeah. We've always known a view's not a view on LinkedIn. We've always known this, right? People keep on complaining about video. Oh, videos do so much worse. Well, let's be realistic. For a view, or as it's now known, an impression on LinkedIn, it just has to be in somebody's feed and they've scrolled past it. They get that view, that impression. Whereas LinkedIn video, the user needs to watch that for 6 seconds or more. So it's a different way of calculating it, which is why video appears to get less reach. That's just, it's a different way of calculating it. So for me, that's the really big thing is impressions. The increased analytics, not having to perhaps rely so much on third-party services such as Shield Analytics, shieldapp.io. If you want to check it out, it checks out all your LinkedIn posts and gives you some really useful data. So that change to impressions for me is going to be the big thing. And I'm with you as well, Sarah, that being able to edit videos, I hope, as the rumors are circulating, that we are going into short form video. Finally, the likes of TikTok, Reels, and so on is coming to LinkedIn. For me, the biggest mistake they made in the last year was getting rid of stories. That was just a crazy decision by them. I'd like to see them come back. But certainly, yeah, I think if we can get this short form video, it's going to be huge. Already, people are preconditioned on LinkedIn not to really watch videos longer than 90 seconds long. So it's going to really put that impetus on that short form video and be able to really get people to get across their messages quicker and succincter. So essentially, it makes people better communicators. So yeah, those are my 2, 3, 4, 5 cents on those issues.
Well, already the profile video is short. And they've expanded it too, right? It's longer than 30 seconds now. I can't remember how much longer it is right now. But Yeah,
Again, for me,
great.
Sarah, it's a mistake. If you're spending up to 45 seconds on no one's going to watch that. You're really wanting that 15, 20 seconds,
Right.
A quick who you are and what you do, absolutely fine. But really getting into the problem you solve and a call to action at the end. So that 30 seconds, I think, is really essential. Again, another interesting feature LinkedIn are bringing in is that now within the comments, it's rolling out. If I hover over Christian's name, if he comments on one of my posts, his video will have a blue ring around it. I'll be able to click in it and it'll take me straight to his profile video. That's a game changer in itself.
Nice.
So exciting things happening.
They're nice little elegant touches. I think they've seen the different platforms try and fail with these. So it's nice that LinkedIn is taking their time with some of this.
My feeling is as well that, if you look at, there's not a lot of Gen Z on LinkedIn. It's not to say they're not, but they're not quite as much. It really is more that millennials, Gen X kind of place where people are going. So I think just purely for the users that use LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn are deliberately trying to be that little bit more careful about how they release features, how they introduce them, and so on. I'm very fortunate enough to have a creator manager assigned to me by LinkedIn. And I was asking him that question, when's LinkedIn going to get its head around video and start giving it more reach, more visibility? And his reaction was exactly that. It's about helping the users to understand it, and I think that's what LinkedIn does well. It doesn't tend to be massive, complicated feature. They tend to keep it quite sensible. Also, audio rooms getting subtitles is huge as well. Getting closed captioning for audio rooms, really important for accessibility. So I'm excited to see where audio rooms go. However, is it going to go a la Clubhouse, when Clubhouse was massive because it was invite only, and then the buzz seems to have died down quite a bit. I think during the pandemic, Clubhouse exploded because people were tired of being on video so much. But I think that as we're beginning to move away from this, I wonder how impactful audio rooms will be. As I say, I think you've got to have a strategy. I think just going on and talking by yourself is not a good idea. I think the fact you can invite people to stage is huge, and you really want to be using it as part of that community building and the continuation of that community to getting as many voices in as possible.
Right. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned audio rooms, because that is part of our next block of news that we have coming along. So why don't we just jump into quickly the news from Meta so that we can get to questions that we'll have with Darren. So one of the things, this is going to be a little bit out of order, so the slides will have to catch up with me. But so Instagram is talking about, Darren, you had just mentioned the short form video. Instagram is testing out full screen reels and images. So it's actually going to take over the whole part of your screen. And our favorite Instagram executive, Adam Mosseri, announced this week what that might look like. And it's interesting, I read through the comments on his reel post, and there were people who were saying, clearly people who are seeing it in the test mode on their accounts, saying that it's a little harder to see comments, it's a little harder to like, they're not really sure if they like it or not, but change takes time. So we'll see what happens with that. They are testing longer reels too, going up to 90 seconds. If you remember, TikTok is also testing longer form content up to 10 minutes. So it's going to be interesting where vertical video length is going to land on. But Meta is reporting right now that of the time spent on Instagram, 20% is spent on Reels right now. They are saying it's the fastest growing feature on both LinkedIn, on Instagram and Facebook. But you know what? It's the newest feature, so of course it's going to be the fastest growing. Speaking of podcasts, speaking of audio, you brought it up, Darren, right? Facebook is saying goodbye to Facebook podcasts that they call sound bites. They are going to move live audio into Facebook Live, so you will have the option to be either on video or just audio. But they are deciding after less than a year, actually, they're 1 month short of a year, that podcasts will be a thing of the past. So it is interesting that platforms aren't trying to just keep features going that people aren't using. They're actually saying, nope, it's not working. We're ending it. Like LinkedIn stories, like Twitter fleets, and now sound bites for Facebook. Another piece of meta news, and again, we're burying the lead now, right? But Facebook did have a long post about how they're bringing WhatsApp into the Meta Business Suite. So you'll be able to bring WhatsApp chats into your inbox. And here's the thing that I think is really interesting is that they are going to have some lead generation tools. This is just an announcement. We will definitely talk about it more when this happens, but it's going to be able to, you're going to be able to have more form customization with Instagram and have it link over to CRMs and other tools that you use. So I think this is going to be a really interesting tool that's coming through. And since I'm still rolling through the news, I'll add our last news of the week, and that is Twitter Spaces is adding more analytics. And correct me if I'm wrong, Christian, I think that is actually just on mobile for right now to see correct. Those analytics.
Yes.
Yeah. So got through it. What do you think about that?
What angle do you want to take? Is it like, what's the most interesting topic, or?
Yeah, what's the most, well, Darren actually teased a lot of these ideas just through what LinkedIn is doing.
Sarah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. I think it's just the trend that we're seeing, right? That the different platforms are testing what kind of short form video is going to work, what kind of audio is going to work, and to just drop things that aren't working.
I got to say this, the podcast one surprises me a bit. It surprises me, I think, because it hasn't been that long. And I think part of it is there's just confusion in the marketplace. I saw people think like podcasting and they don't always think audio, for example. They think, oh, well, they think their live stream is a podcast. And it's like, well, not really. Like you're streaming, maybe making the podcast. And so I heard people that said, hey, Facebook's shutting down podcast, and they're like, well, how does that affect my live streams? So it's like, well, it really doesn't. It was just a channel to be able to promote your podcast episode, stuff you could already have done. So that, to me, that was, I think, one of the more surprising things out of this. Darren, what about you?
Yeah. It's definitely interesting in so much as that the way that these companies are obviously testing. For me, I'll reiterate it again. LinkedIn getting rid of stories was the biggest mistake they have made in the last year. It was a huge oversight. Theoretically, yes, the place where stories once were will now become where audio rooms are, but there's place for both of them. Stories were really nice, showing that behind the scenes, behind the green screen, so to speak, which is really nice from that community building. So yeah, I think LinkedIn were too quick to get rid of those stories. I think, Christian, you make a good point that there's just there's market confusion over certain things. And I think it's really down to these social media companies to be truly educating its users, again, on a broader scale of, from the creator perspective and from the consumer perspective, and help us as creators to improve. As I say, the fact LinkedIn has these creator managers is awesome. I mean, as a creator myself, it's definitely helpful to have somebody there from the company that you're able to ask questions to, and you obviously get beta testing to. But yeah, that's kind of my general thoughts. I think being able to bring information into a CRM, I think that's going to be really, really beneficial for many. But yeah, I feel more testing perhaps needs to be done before completely axing a service. I don't know any creator on LinkedIn who thinks that axing stories was a good idea. So they might come back. They might well come back. I mean, my creator manager says never say never, so I'm optimistic. But I'm not holding my breath.
Well, last summer, I'm trying to think back. Last summer, we talked about LinkedIn acquiring the app. I think it's Jump Rope. Is it called Jump Rope?
Yes.
And that was sort of that was a way to sort of weave together stories into a little slide deck video autoplay kind of content, right? So we haven't heard what's happening with jump rope, and if that is going to be something. Maybe Darren, have you heard anything about it? Maybe
I've not. I wish I could come in here and break an exclusive, but nope, nothing to that sort whatsoever. No idea.
Yeah.
It'd be nice, as I say. I mean, I personally feel, I mean, if you look at Instagram, I mean, stories are huge. It just is. It's an optional add-in, you know? And certainly, I mean, the strategy that I used to use with stories is that if somebody views a story, then that's a way in. I'm a very big believer that on LinkedIn, we never, or any social media, we never send a cold DM. Nobody cares about you, about your service, and they certainly don't give a damn about your free 30-minute discovery call where you're going to solve that problem in 30 minutes for the transactional price of.
Or that $100 Amazon gift card they're going to give you.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's just one that I've been getting a lot of lately. Yeah.
So. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, it comes back to that idea, you know, nothing says that you're not busy like offering a free discovery call 30 minutes to every single person that you speak to by the second message. So we're always looking for that commonality. It needs to be natural. It needs to be organic. And stories were a really nice way to do that. You know, it's a nice way for them to reach out and vice versa. And it's that light-hearted other side of us, you know. So for personal things, I think it's really nice to show that other side of us. So yeah. I miss stories. I don't know how many clients I got through stories. So I am missing stories. Let's put it that way.
Well, and I don't remember the percentage, but Social Insider released a report a couple months ago about the conversion rate within stories, that putting links in your Instagram stories actually led to real sales, real conversions, real touches with real people.
Yep, no surprise. Again, being careful about it. So it is that balance between value that we're offering and, you know, this link. But yeah, it's a really nice way you can, I think stories are an excellent idea and they should have done it better, I think, you know.
Yeah. Well, since we're talking about stories, why don't we jump into our questions with you, our Q&A with you, Darren, because it is all about storytelling, right? You've already talked about your 3 C's, so hopefully we didn't jump too fast into that. But what can you add on about the key principles of storytelling on LinkedIn, especially when it comes to the solopreneurs and the coaches? Because when we talk about small businesses, I think those solo business practitioners are often left out and always caught in that middle. Are you, or are you your brand? And how do you tell that story?
Well, we are our brand and our brand is us. It's as simple as that when it comes to being a solopreneur, when it comes to using LinkedIn as that tool. It is one and the same. So for me, when it comes to storytelling, I always teach those that I work with, there's 6 essential elements to storytelling. And this isn't just on LinkedIn, this is in life as well. I've just noticed that light is ever so slightly in shot. We're going to go with it. It looks rustic, we'll just say. So we've got our relatable character. You are like your audience and your audience are like you. We've got specific details that show we understand the worlds in which they inhabit, the problems, the emotions, the objects within those worlds. We've got our Goldilocks emotion, not too much, not too little, just the right amount. It must be authentic, it must be genuine, it must be coming from the right place, right? From there, we've got our complication, something that goes wrong. A story without a complication is merely an anecdote. And people don't remember anecdotes. So we have that complication because quite simply, as we go towards the complication, we get a chemical cocktail happening in the brain. We get cortisol, we get oxytocin and dopamine all fighting each other in a big, beautiful cocktail within the brain, which is what makes these stories sticky. We've then got a brief moment of significant change. Stories are transformative. So what was the result of fixing this problem, of going about how to fix this problem, this complication? And then finally, the lesson learned, what we've learned about it, the business point, how we tie it to our business. So for me, that's storytelling in a nutshell. And it's really about using these elements within our content, whether it be text only, text plus image, carousels, polls, video, using these storytelling elements, making sure that we've always got we've always got a relatable character. We are like their audience. We're showing we're like them and they're like us. Those specific details of the problems that we're having, the understanding, the empathy through emotion, through vulnerability, that you've been through something similar before. We've therefore got the brief moment, the complication, the brief moment, how we figured it out, and that resolution. So every single bit of content should be having these elements within it. And when they do, we start really beginning to connect with our audience, with our communities. Well, it turns an audience into a community. Mm-hmm. Audiences are passive. They sit there and applaud and don't add anything. Communities are active. They actually share ideas. They develop ideas, develop points. And that's what we're looking for. And when we tell stories, we're far more likely to build community rather than an audience, because a community are naturally going to want to be a part of this and come back into it. So that's how I see storytelling when it comes to content creation.
I love that relatable piece, that relatable character. And I think you're our first guest who's talked about neurochemistry.
Nice. Well, that's it. People, awesome. What happens, I find quite often, Juan Santiago, so excited, lovely to see. What people quite often say is, and I was an English teacher for 10 years. So before pivoting into this, I worked with a lot of people. I live in Spain, so teaching English as a second language, but working with pharma industry. So teaching them storytelling and presentation skills. And that was the thing that I'd always come up against. Yeah, stories are lovely, but I just want to get to the point. Or, yeah, stories are what I tell my kids before they go to sleep. There's no place for it in a conference, in a presentation, in a congress. What a load of BS. Of course there is. We all use stories. It's how we learn. It's how we've evolved. It's how we've built societies. It's a case of when we start bringing in the scientific background to it, then why wouldn't we want to be stimulating these chemical compound hormones reactions within the brain? It's what works. So I think that understanding a little bit about the science behind the story tends to just be that little missing bit of the jigsaw that really brings people on board.
Mm-hmm. Right, that special sauce. I don't know why I really like this person, but I really like this person. And it's because your brain is telling you, right?
That's it. How many boring presentations of people watching this sat through where you sit there for an hour and by the next day, all you remember is, was a boring bugger, so it was. I don't remember anything, right? Because they've bored you with facts, data, PowerPoint screens, balls that we don't need whatsoever. Whereas it's those stories, when we think back to a presentation which really engaged us, which really captivated us, there's usually quite a few stories scattered between them. I work with a gentleman called Eduardo Brinceño. He is one of the world authorities on growth mindset. He does a lot of speaking engagements. He's got a TEDx speech, which is our talk, which is absolutely brilliant on YouTube. He's got a few of them actually. And he was somebody who'd never used storytelling before. So he'd given these wonderful presentations, but no storytelling. There was the audience weren't invested in him. They were invested in the idea. And he recently gave a big presentation, and we actually worked on his story. And suddenly he said himself, the audience are engaged. They want to know more. It's not to say they weren't engaged before, but they're really, you can see them nodding along with you, holding their breaths in those right moments. And it's a power of story. It's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. So much to think about. I think everybody watching and me for certain are going to replay all of this to remember all of the tips. So let's talk a little bit about using some of the tools on LinkedIn, because we know that the platforms like you to use their tools. They give you a little more of an algorithm boost. So what are some, you've mentioned carousels, you mentioned writing, you mentioned a little bit of video, you mentioned the beloved stories that are no longer, alas. So what are some of the tools that you recommend people use on LinkedIn to tell their story?
Being themselves, Sarah. Screw the tools. Honestly, there's no need for them, right? Whether you're doing, as I said, text only, text plus image, video, carousels, polls, just mixing your content, I think, is really useful. Again, having said that, there's a storyteller on LinkedIn, Ash Rathod, a good friend. He only uses text-only posts, and he's got some following. He gets a huge amount of engagement. So my real advice would be experiment with different forms of content. Find those which your audience really resonate with. Which ones are you getting a lot of views on? One of my clients, Christos, shout out to Christos if he's watching, he deals with health, fitness, nutrition. For him, his videos do perform incredibly well because of his niche and because of the way that he is. So I'd really say experiment with different forms, see what works, see what doesn't. Going live is always going to be great, but the problem with LinkedIn is that when you create a live event, it gets next to zero reach. Hardly anybody sees it. So that's why you want to be using the invite tool, and you also want to be publicizing that event another time as well, just using a text plus image post, so it's going to get that little bit more reach. In the past, polls were massive. So again, going full circle, the way that one of the two main ways that the algorithm on LinkedIn determines how much reach to give is really that engagement within that first hour, 2 hours, the amount of people that are spending, the amount of time people are spending reading it, and the comments that are coming in. So it's really important that we're able to be mixing up our content. It's important that we're wanting to get as much reach as possible. So that's why in the past, polls have done really, really well, because a vote in a poll had the same power as a comment. So therefore, it was super powerful. That's why we all, maybe 6 months ago, every second post seemed to be a poll because they got given so much reach. That's changed in the last 2 months. I've noticed a downturn with regards to the reach of the polls. But again, that's not to say we don't use it. Stop focusing on the algorithm. It's not your friend. It's never going to be your friend. And we can only do what we do. Oh, reach is down. Yeah. It's down for everyone. So we're all on that level playing field, right? So that's really my advice, is be using storytelling strategies, but vary your content. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to share your story. Don't be afraid to show why you think this way. I think on LinkedIn especially, everyone agrees with each other. It is, for me, the best social network because it's a beautiful community and people are there's a lot less trolls, for example, on LinkedIn. But having said that, as a byproduct of that, it's a very happy community where there's not much disagreement. So always being not always, but some posts being that little bit spiky, being that little bit polarizing, having the confidence in us and our abilities. We don't need to be everyone's expert, right? We don't need to be an expert for everyone. There aren't enough people in the world to work with. Or sorry, there's too many people in the world to work with. We want to be an individual's expert. And to do that, we want to be really ourselves, telling stories and showing how we view the world. Some people, you could have exactly the same course, for example, as another person on LinkedIn. Some people are going to want to work with this person, others with this person. And it's down to the content you're creating and the audience that you're speaking to. So don't be wide in general, be specific, be ourselves, because it's difficult on social to have a mask on, because eventually that mask begins to slip and you're scrambling to get it back on again. Just being ourselves is really, really important. And it's that authenticity which really relates to people and people relate with. So yeah, I would be varying with a wide variety of different types of posts. Carousels are really nice for those how-to kind of posts. Polls are nice. There's 3 different types of polls that we can create that I teach in my video accelerator. Using different types of polls, using different types of carousels, really using what's available to us effectively, having a strategy is really important, because the tools offered in LinkedIn aren't always the best. As I say, live streaming, LinkedIn Live, awesome. But when we're not getting pushed out to many people, it's frustrating. So having strategies around these really important, and taking risks, experimenting.
Right. I love that. Testing things, but also just being yourself, right?
Yeah. And with regards to with regards to vanity metrics, stop looking at impressions. No one gives a damn. You can have 100,000 impressions, but if you've not converted anybody, it's been a waste, right? So don't focus on the conversions. Don't focus on the views. Don't focus on the likes, focus on the comments. That's where your real currency on LinkedIn is. Having this discussion, having content that's either like a mic drop post where there's no call to action for comments because what you've said is so profound, and getting the conversation that way, or directing your community to be starting a conversation there. But I always say, People that we work with want to be emotionally led by us. And that starts in the content. It then goes on to the comments. It then gets into the DMs, and it then gets onto that sales call itself. We've got to be leading from the very start. And that's why people view us as their expert rather than an expert.
And I got to say, I like the idea of not necessarily focusing on, just all the different tools that are out there, because there are a ton out there. And sometimes people can get too invested into using a tool for things when, you look at a lot of the experts that are out there and they're not using any tools. They're building their community, and they may have one or two little small tools that they're using, but they're not using a tool for this and a tool for this and a tool for this and a tool for this, because then it just becomes so what's the word I'm looking for, Sarah? It just becomes so just too structured, I guess, at times.
Or it's just scattered, right? Yeah. It's scattered. It's trying, as Darren was saying, don't try to be everything to everybody. Know who you're trying to talk to and talk to them, and be yourself.
Awesome. So I think we have one more question, right, for Darren?
We have one more question, and that is, I think a lot of solopreneurs, certainly ones that I've worked with in my workshops, they've had a fear of self-promotion, even though they are in business for themselves and they recognize that marketing and promotion is important. So what are some tips for people who need to overcome that fear of promotion, but also need to really better tell their story? What are some tips for framing that story that you can give us that people can use this week?
Yeah, so structurally, we've all heard of the hero's journey. The only problem with the hero's journey is it's 17 stages long. We go through too many different characters, setting, complications, and it's far too much when it comes to LinkedIn. So there's just a simple structure to be using. This idea of having a normal world, a complication, and the new normal. And that's structurally the way to be thinking. The new normal is the mirror image of the normal. For example, you watch the start of a movie, you've got a couple who just hate each other. Oh, I'm going to kill you. We know within the last 10 minutes they're going to be together, loved it completely, and living happily ever after. So the new normal is quite often the mirror image of the normal, and it's got this complication in the middle. What I would say with regards to the fear of self-promotion, honestly, again, and it's the way that I view LinkedIn and strategically, I don't care about your product. Stop telling me about it. Your self-promotion is part of your branding through your sharing and telling of stories, whether it be a success story or a failure story. As human beings, we're naturally obsessed when we've got somebody who's had a failure, but then it's what they've learned from it after that, which is so powerful, Nobody wants to listen to a leader who's always perfect and never messed up in their lives. People are far more inspired when a leader tells a story where they messed up. This is what they did, and this is what they learned from that. So these are all forms of self-promotion. Within my program, there's really 2 days a week that we do any sort of sales kind of posts, and even then they're very, very subtle. Monday, Thursday, Fridays, all about that engagement, and it's about simply building a community and engaging. If a community constantly feels they're going to be sold to, why the hell would they interact with you? If all you're doing is sending that DM, first or second DM offering a call, well, you're putting them off. Look to build the community. Think about your program, your service, your course. Think about your knowledge. Don't be afraid to give away 80% of that through your content. That in itself is self-promotion, because you're positioning yourself there as that expert. So don't be afraid in doing that. That's what I do myself, and people aren't so much concerned. It's a little bit like on the sales call when we start boring people with every week a minute breakdown of what we're going to be doing. People don't care. People care. It's a feeling that they're buying. This person's got me. They get me and they've got me. And that's what I'd be really encouraging when it comes to LinkedIn and creating content. Show your value, show your worth, but you don't need to be, these are self-promotion in themselves. We don't need to be talking about offers 3 times a week, because then what are you really there for? To be pushing offers on people or to be sharing value? I would personally far rather share value, build a community, have really amazing conversations where I can also learn from, rather than constantly promoting myself and my product, my service. I think this is really important. And I think we also burn out quicker because it's a very insular and competitive world. And all we're doing is talking about our product, our service, and what we do. For me, I love it when a LinkedIn expert, a fellow expert, jumps in on my content and starts sharing some value and vice versa. This is amazing. They're helping to position me as this expert. So self-promotion comes through a lot of different ways, through your community, through the comments you leave, through the content you create, through the value that you offer. So when it comes to self-promotion, I would say don't overly do it. Be secure in yourself and take risks, experiment. It's always difficult to talk about a vulnerability, but we only ever share our scars, not our scabs, because scabs are still raw. We can pick them off and it can be a bloodbath for our audience. So we only share scars. They're still there. They remind us of a time, but we've healed and moved through that. So if you've got any blood, basically keep away from sharing that. You're not quite ready to yet.
I got to say,
I love that metaphor.
And I like the example of just how, like, just telling stories is like, I love that aspect of just the fact that storytelling is, a way to do the self-promotion. I mean, a lot of people, like, they're afraid to give everything away. They feel like, oh, I have to put a program out there and sell somebody on the program. And it's like, no, you don't. And I think, like, that's where I think you could also, another takeaway I think I would add would be, you can learn from other people, who are successful. Look at, like, you mentioned your friend who does, text only post. Like, you can look at the content they're sharing and the format and see, hey, is that something I want to? And I love the idea you also mentioned about experimenting, experiment with it and see if that's something that works for you. So this is great, all great information.
And take risk as well, Chris. Take risks. If it doesn't work, don't give up. Try it again. Try it again. I think people I don't know the statistics. Maybe one of you or maybe both of you know, but how many creators give up after 3 months, 6 months? I would like to see that statistic because I'm guessing the chances are it's a high percentage. One of my clients that I've been working with, they've really struggled. They're not technological. They're not storytelling minded. It's a whole new shift that they've been doing. And they have at times really struggled. They certainly were struggling on social media. Through working together, they've been able to get more content out there, to get more of a community built. But I'm so proud about this person because they've just been resilient, guys. They've not given up. They've known that they've got a service that kicks ass and it's going to change lives. And they've just been resilient. Every day they've learned a little bit more. They've improved a little bit more. So not giving up is super important. I love it. Well, to be honest, though, ironically, I love the fact people give up because it means there's less competition out there. But if we've got a community built, they will sustain and support us. And that's why community building, very first video of my accelerator is community building. How do we build a community? 64% of users on LinkedIn are passive. They never like, never create, never share, never comment. So that's a problem for us because we're really wanting to hit the 36% who do. So really finding and building and populating your community with them is vital because as well, 64% of people aren't going to be commenting, but they're seeing your content regularly. And again, it's knowing the different signals that they show us to then jump in and to get that conversation going. But I'll have people reaching out to work and they'll say, yeah, I've been following you for the last year. Have you?
Right.
I've never heard of you in my life. Literally, you've never liked a post, but they're there and they're passive, and that's okay. But it's that active community we want to be using and building ourselves with.
Fantastic. This has been a great show, by the way. Just so much value. So I want to encourage everyone to go back and watch the replay here. So I just have one last question for you, and it's where can people get in touch with you, Darren?
Have a guess, Christian. Just a guess. I'm only going to give you one guess, brother. One guess. Go on. Tell me. What do you think?
Could it be LinkedIn, maybe? LinkedIn?
Maybe.
You win follower of the day for that, Christian.
Fantastic.
So,
Fantastic.
It's pretty lucky,
Yeah.
You get a free 30-minute discovery call with me, It's nice. Yeah, LinkedIn. I don't have a website because I want to prove to those that I work with, you don't need a website to start selling your product. Yes, it helps. Of course it helps. My course is obviously on a website online. We don't need to. Far too often, solopreneurs and coaches waste money getting a website done that they never maintain, never update, and never has any SEO to drive traffic to it. Yeah. You know what? On LinkedIn, we can do it all organically. I personally would recommend the Business Premium because it gives us unlimited searches, but we can do it organically. Very fortunate, very honored and privileged to say that I'm on course to have a 6-figure a year. I've not spent 1 cent on advertising.
Nice.
All through
That's
LinkedIn,
great.
all organic. So
very cool.
It can be done.
So if you want to connect with Darren, LinkedIn, also, be sure you send him a note as well. So Sarah, how about you? How can people get in touch with you as well?
Well, LinkedIn is the theme of the day, so I will say LinkedIn. You can find me across social media at Sarah Monroe VT. And if you want to connect on LinkedIn, please drop a note and let me know that you saw me on Social Chatter.
And could I ask a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
So I am LinkedIn exclusively for good reason as well. How important is it, very quickly, Sarah and Christian, how important is it that we diversify and we cross-pollinate other social media platforms? Obviously for recycling and for reusing content, it's very, very useful. How important is it? How, as solopreneurs, coaches, small businesses, should we have many different channels, or should we focus on one and let it grow?
I think it all depends on, as you said, on the community that you build. I have to say, it's taken me time to evolve my social media strategy. And I have decided that LinkedIn is really where I'll be for business. Facebook is for my close friends, really. It's for friends and people I've known throughout my life. And Instagram is whatever I find as I wander through the world. I loved Instagram until I started taking, intensive classes on how to use Instagram for business. And then I hated Instagram, and it was worse than Twitter for me. And so Instagram is now just my happy place again. And I use LinkedIn for business. So I use the tools differently as communication tools for my life. Each one serves a different purpose in my life.
Love it.
And I think I would add to that, I think that we get into having a presence on the platforms or trying to have a presence. And then I think the hardest part is we try to keep that up. And I think the key thing would be, if you've been trying to do that, I think don't be afraid to drop some platforms and start on one platform, figure out, hey, that's exactly where I want to, put all my effort into, go really hard, get really good at that platform, and then add additional ones as you see a fit, not, constantly having to okay, I'm doing it here and here and here and here and here. And don't try to take shortcuts either with that. Don't go to, you can use scheduling tools to put content across all these platforms. But if you're not going to be on that platform engaging, for example, it's just throwing something to the wall to see if it sticks. So that's what I would say.
It's really great advice. Yeah. I spent 18 months when I was still an English teacher, 2 years on Instagram, got to 13,000 followers, really enjoyed it, every day creating, posting content, didn't make one solitary cent from it. But I always felt that the skills that I was learning through graphic design, messing about with Photoshop, Premiere Pro, these skills would one day put me in good stead to be using it more creatively and using it from a business perspective. So I think I'd also kind of add to that as well, is that set up an account where you're just messing about, you're just learning your craft, you're learning how to be building a community, you're learning what works, what doesn't, and so on. Experimentation's the aim of the game, because nothing, as great as programs and courses are, we are wanting to be our individual. So I always feel that once we've completed a program or course, my own program as well, it's about taking all these ideas, experimenting, seeing what works, and constantly looking to evolve so that we don't become dry or stale when it comes to content.
Excellent advice.
Yeah, I love that. So,
just one couple quick points. We're going to have a blog post recap. It'll go out over the weekend with the tips that Darren shared, as well as all the news topics that we covered. We'll also be back next Thursday. That's May 12th. Next show is May 12th. Sarah and I, we're still working on the time, but we'll get that out.
It'll be early. It'll
probably be early, yes. So, with that, great. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. This has been a great show. So be sure. Oh, by the way, Sarah, I think we said people can connect with you on LinkedIn, right? Just to make sure you can. Okay. Sorry. But yeah, so this has been a lot of fun. So Darren, thanks a lot for joining us. Sarah, anything else you want to add?
No, thanks everybody for joining us who are on Twitter Spaces too. And we'll see you all next week.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.
Thank you for having me. Adios.